Welcome to the Disrupted Podcast, where we analyze and discuss technology that's changing the world as we know it. My guest with me here is Tochukwu, who's currently a student of University of Maryland and also a software engineer for Microsoft. Before we get started, Tochukwu, I'm really excited for this conversation today. But before we jump right into it, could you give us a quick explanation of who you are, a background?
So like you said, my name is Tochukwu Ibe Ekiocha. Most people call me Toch. Like you said, I'm a student at the University of Maryland College Park. And just to correct, because I know I can get in trouble if it's not completely stated. So I'm a software engineer and intern at Microsoft. I interned there last summer, and I'm going to be interning there again this summer. But yeah, I'm a student. I'm a computer science student, junior. I'm in my junior year, but I also do freelance. I've been doing freelance for at least, I'd say, 3 years now. I'm just managing different clients, working on different software engineering projects, building applications, stuff like that.
If you had to point back to a time, obviously in the past decade or two, maybe, where software really exploded, like what would you say that was?
Past decade or two, software exploded. I'd say the first that comes to my mind is probably the Dotcom Bubble. Even though I don't understand everything about it, right? Because, that first of all, that was probably, either before I was born or when I was an infant. I haven't looked into it too much, but pretty much, domains, were popular. The internet was kind of young back then, right? And everybody wanted to have an online business.
Yep.
As soon as you have an online business, you have a domain name, a place people can go to see you online, right? That had a lot of value. Like even till today, the effects of it are still spread. Like good luck finding a domain name for your business idea that,
So true, so true. They're all taken.
They're almost all taken,
Yeah.
So the effects of it is still felt today. So that was probably, a really big time where there was a lot of growth. Yeah, that's pretty much the biggest one that I can think of on the spot at the moment.
I totally agree. So what I've learned in history, times of war or crisis changes how we do things forever, changes it radically. In 2020, there was a war. COVID was a war. We were fighting a war not against humans, but against a disease, against the pandemic, against the virus. And it pretty much caused a paradigm shift from, like you said, from the person-to-person interaction to more of a global interaction, more of a internet-based interaction, more of a virtual interaction. So I feel like now it is essential for everyone into this world to have some kind of digital footprint, have some kind of social media account, have some kind of a digital presence, pretty much, because that is the new normal. That is what we're transitioning into. And yeah, most of the tech companies, if not all of them, now have some kind of work from home policy, like you said. So even though there were bad parts to COVID and overall it was bad, so many people lost jobs, people died from it, but however, some good did come out of it. This more of a global environment. Now we're a lot more connected than we were pre-COVID. And I think this is the new normal. This is how it's going to be. And like you said, platforms like Upwork are pretty much positioned for success in this new environment. I feel the 9 to 5 way of living and working is gone. I mean, it wouldn't just go quick like that. It's going to be gradually. But I feel like in the next 5 years, it's going to be gone. People are now gonna work in chunks. You go on Upwork, pick up a contract, go do that, then chill. Whenever you need some more money, go back on Upwork, pick up a few contracts, get paid, chill. So this kind of forces us to have to be an expert in something, and someone like yourself who's an expert in software engineering, I believe that's a necessary skill for this new normal we're transitioning into, for this new world we're transitioning into. Right now, I'm a high school student. I'm just getting ready to graduate. I come to you for advice. What advice would you give me to prepare me for this new world we're transitioning into?
The first thing I would say to do is to build your skills, right? So you have an interest into getting into the software development industry. You have to build your skills. And I would recommend going online, like to a YouTube, or if you have the cash to spare, maybe a Udemy, get a few courses, play around, try to find, because software development is such a big area, right? There's like there's high level programming, there's low level programming, and that's another thing we can get into and talk to for a long time, right? But for a high school student, I would recommend to start with something that's high level, right? So I'm talking like a the easiest one I would say is like a JavaScript. Start with like a JavaScript, then do the web development stack more or less, right?
So that's like a JavaScript, HTML,
And
CSS,
CSS,
React,
exactly.
Angular. Does that
Yeah,
include
yeah.
those two?
You can get into React, Angular. Those are like frameworks once you have solid fundamentals, right? Another approach you can take is if you want to do more enterprise, although I won't recommend that for someone who's just starting out, right? Like maybe go into like a Java. Reason I won't recommend doing like a Java or even a C++ or like a Rust, all these languages that fit into that category is that these are more geared towards like enterprise and geared towards working for someone else, right? Just because they're all compiled languages, and they in order to build, and it's longer to write code, right? So in order to build something useful, like let's say you wanted to build the same exact thing with like a Java versus a JavaScript, right? The same exact app, in JavaScript, maybe you can write it in like 50 lines of code or something. In Java, it'll probably be like 150 or 200 or 300, right? And usually the ways you can apply it to is it's much more restricted in Java, but I'll leave it at that, right? So I'll say start with a JavaScript, learn the web stack, or you can also do a Python too. That's another language that's similar, that has an ecosystem that's easy to approach as well and easy to navigate through. So do that, learn your skills, learn those fundamentals, and then the next thing I'd say is build projects. Like get a portfolio of projects. You can either follow YouTube tutorials and build, code as they code. And then, if you're done with the tutorial, maybe you extend it, you add a new feature or two, right? But, get like 2 or 3 projects underneath your belt that you can put on a portfolio. I highly recommend getting a GitHub. And just keep your code there, and just understanding Git in general is really good, because in the industry, Git is pretty much used all the time. And Git is a version control software for anyone who may not know what that is. And it's spelled GIT. And so you use GitHub because one, it lets you keep track of all your code and the projects you make, and it also lets you easily share it with potential recruiters or anyone, right? So let's say you've done this and you're now in college. The next thing I would highly recommend is that you go ahead and set up a website for yourself. It really doesn't cost too much. The average college student can definitely afford to pay, hosting for a year. I think for me, my website costs like $150 a year or something for hosting. And I build it. I use like a WordPress or something to build it, which is another thing that I would recommend. Like, even though I'm a software developer and I can build websites from scratch, I don't do that for my website, my personal website, just because you want your personal website to be able to change pretty quickly, and you want to be able to make updates to it fast. And if you're building it from scratch, it just takes you longer to make quick changes. Just use something like a WordPress or a Wix, and just call it a day. It makes it easy for you to manage your website. So I recommend doing that, pay for the hosting and just put it up there. I also highly recommend getting on LinkedIn. Anyone who knows me knows that I do a lot on LinkedIn. I pretty much post, maybe weekly. At some point, it was definitely weekly. Right now, maybe it's like once every 2 weeks or something, just because I'm kind of like, I have a lot of things to do, more or less.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I highly recommend doing that. I highly recommend, and on LinkedIn, you can start posting things about your experience, right? Like projects that you're building, things you're working on, things you're learning. I highly recommend this, because you do that long enough, you get to a point where, recruiters just start reaching out to you, right? Like,
True.
I get that, a lot. Like you'd be, if I pulled up my LinkedIn page right now, you'd be surprised the amount of recruiters that, send me messages that I just ignore because, I can't get to all of them, right? One, because, I already have a position for the summer, and two, like I just can't get to all of them. And, some of them I may not be fit for, right? But yeah, there's a number of them in there. So I recommend doing that. And I also recommend getting on this thing called jumpstart.me. It's also another great website where you can meet potential recruiters and, get potential internship opportunities, right? That's on the end of, if you want to market yourself, that's like marketing yourself, putting the work you're doing out there so that you can be discovered. Moving back onto your skills and your progress, yeah, just keep on building different projects. You can build, I highly recommend, building an idea of your own. Maybe like you have a cool startup idea, regardless of whether or not, it's going to be the next Facebook. You're going to learn a lot. Speaking from my own experience, right? You're going to learn a lot from that experience, and it's going to help you in so many different ways, right? So maybe think of an idea that's fairly complex and build it out thoroughly, right? Like the one project, a startup that I still work on till this day, a skiffle. I can't tell you how much wonders it's done on my resume. As far as like opportunities that I apply to, I put that there and know that that's a real world project that's out there, and that's something that's really helped me a lot as far as making me appear as a strong candidate, and also having skills, right? Because a lot of the skills I learned from that project I've taken and I've applied to a lot of the freelance work that I've been doing.
It's been great having you. Hopefully we can do this again, but till next time, I hope you have a really good rest of your day.